The internet produces thousands of new horror stories every single day. If you want to hold a reader's attention in a space that crowded, you don't have time for slow world building. You have to hook them in seconds. The Silence Behind Him navigates this landscape by stripping away everything but the essential narrative beats, delivering a complete psychological setup in under 200 words. This diagram shows the physical layout of the story's opening. A man is home alone. At 2:38 a.m., he wakes up to the sound of breaking glass downstairs. He immediately grabs his phone, retreats to a second-floor closet, and dials 911. The dispatcher gives him a specific instruction: stay on the line, don't make a sound. We see the expected rules of a typical home invasion playing out. The threat is downstairs, the victim is hiding upstairs, and help is on the way. On paper, it's a scenario we've seen in a dozen thriller movies. Yet this tiny piece of microfiction went massively viral. That initial mundanity is the point. The story deliberately lulls the reader into a false sense of familiar vulnerability. You think you know exactly how this scenario operates, which perfectly positions you for the trap. Writers use a concept called the false anchor to manipulate expectations. Here, the sound of shattered glass downstairs acts as that anchor. It forces your attention to the ground floor, establishing a clear physical distance between the monster and the victim. Then, the narrative abruptly shifts the sensory experience. The man in the closet is blind to what's happening outside the door. All the critical information is suddenly routed through the ears of the 911 dispatcher listening on the phone. This chart maps the information flow. The victim is isolated, while the dispatcher is our omniscient observer. She asks, "Sir, who walked behind you?" This triggers cleithrophobia, the fear of being trapped. Moving the perspective outside turns the safe closet into a locked cage. The caller freezes. He's supposed to be alone. But moments later, the dispatcher hears slow, heavy breathing. It isn't coming from the caller. It's coming from something standing inches behind him. Taking the point of view away from the protagonist removes his physical agency. The dread multiplies because we realize the threat completely bypassed every presumed defense without making a sound. The narrative timeline then abruptly skips forward. Minutes later, the police arrive and begin physically sweeping the property. The officers check every entry point. Every single door is still locked. Every window is completely intact. The house is completely empty. This diagram shows the clear contradiction. On one side, the auditory evidence of shattering glass. On the other, the physical reality of an untouched house. Zero overlap. Deleting the logical explanation of a burglar creates a paradox. Your brain simply cannot reconcile these two facts. Confronting a threat that defies the basic laws of physics forces the mind to look for answers outside the realm of biology. The threat is no longer a man with a hammer. It is something that can exist in a locked room without occupying space. The story jumps one final time to the aftermath, as detectives sit down to review the recording of the 911 call. They listen to the audio tape and find one last piece of evidence. Just before the call cuts out, a second voice whispers directly into the receiver. "He never turned around." This single sentence recontextualizes every second of the 911 call. If the entity knew he never turned around, it wasn't just in the house, it was standing close enough to watch his eyes for the entire duration of the recording. Notice what the author deliberately leaves out. There is absolutely no physical description of the monster. We don't get its shape, or know its size, or even its origin. This total omission creates narrative paralysis. The victim is physically frozen in the closet, unable to look behind him. At the exact same time, the reader is mentally frozen, given zero details to process or categorize the danger. When you withhold the monster, the audience has to do the heavy lifting. Every single reader subconsciously designs their own bespoke nightmare to fill that empty space. Modern digital horror finds its strength by building an architecture of paradox. It strips away the logical exits one by one, eventually leaving the audience alone with the only thing more terrifying than a monster: their own imagination.